All right, we're going to go ahead and get started this evening. My name is Jessica Reimel. I am the Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent in Cass County. If you're not sure where Cass County is, we border both Arkansas and Louisiana, way out here in Northeast Texas. I am so happy that y'all decided to spend your Tuesday evening with us. I think this is going to be a really great program. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple of things. If you don't mind, let's leave those mics muted unless you have a question. A lot of times your microphone will pick up the echo and it'll create a sound issue for everybody in the call. And if you would like to, you're more than welcome to leave your cameras off. I know a lot of times cameras can be a little bit distracting. And I know that I don't realize how much I fidget until I try to watch myself on my camera. Throughout this program, if at any time you have any questions, down at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat option. Please feel free to pop them in the chat box. And I believe at the end of every speaker, we will give you time to ask some questions of that person. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said before, my name is Jessica Reimel, and I'm the Cass County AgriLife Extension Agent. Joining me this evening and co-hosting this program is Doug Weir, and he is the Marion County Agent. And we have some excellent speakers for y'all this evening. Give me just a second to share my screen. Okay, can somebody let me know that y'all can see what's on my screen?
Can see it.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm gonna talk with you just a little bit about my experience with wild pig abatement in East Texas. And I think before we get started on that, you have to understand a little bit of background about me. I grew up in Kaufman County, which is not in West Texas, but it also would certainly not qualify for East Texas. There are no pine trees where I grew up. My family raised cattle. When I graduated, I went to school and I became an ag teacher. And then following that, I became a county extension agent. My passion in life was always livestock, cattle, grass, goats, helping animals to grow. And I've never been one that was super interested in hunting, wasn't my thing. So when I became the agent in Cass County, that was one of the primary things that I started to get calls about. And I guess I just wasn't aware that there was such a monumental issue. So I took the time to learn about this issue. So I'm going to share some things with you. Some of you may already know this, but it might be good information for those that don't. So the pig issue in Texas is tremendous. Obviously, we cannot count all of them, but the numbers speak for themselves. The population of wild hogs has spread to, I believe it's even more than 36 states at this point. But when I made this presentation earlier in 2020, that was the number. So in 2018, if we had a 5 million pig population, you can assume that in 2021, it has grown since then. Any one sounder of hogs, a sounder is what we call a group of pigs, they're going to range between 500 and 1,500 acres. That's pretty common. So if you have a hog problem, there's a pretty serious chance that your neighbor shares the same hog problem that you do. There is an estimated $52 million loss of producer crops and livestock annually in Texas alone. So in getting ahead of that problem, we know that we have to harvest 66% of these animals for us to keep the population the same. So that's not to make the population go down. That is just to maintain the 5-6 million pigs that we currently have. Okay, Texas Wildlife Services is currently harvesting an estimated 29%, but 29 is a long way from 66. And I know that landowners are doing what they can, but quite frankly, we're not winning this war. And I think a lot of that comes down to the biology of pigs. The pigs that live here in East Texas, I don't know, I guess I just get amazed at how smart they are. They are, of course, a mix of Russian boars that escaped. They were brought here for high fence hunting a long time ago. And of course, some people, turn their domesticated pigs loose or they escaped. And that is what has created these wild hogs that live in the woods. But these things are incredibly versatile and even more adaptable. So they begin reproducing at 6 months of age, and they can have a litter, 2 to 3 litters, excuse me, every 15 months. Of course, they're just like our domesticated hogs. They can't sweat. They like wetland areas, and they're omnivorous. So they'll pretty much, eat what they can find. So they're adaptable, meaning that they they learn how to outsmart people really quickly. I'll tell you more about our trapping program in our county here in a minute, but we have a boar buster trap, and I have seen pigs look up. And if you're not sure what a boar buster is, I'll show you our example here in a second, and you'll understand what I mean by that. For the most part, these pigs are traveling in a group. If you don't see a group, and it's a sow, she probably has friends that are waiting to see if she gets shot before they join her. Most of the time, if you have a pig traveling by itself, it's going to be a boar. And something I find absolutely fascinating is that their fertility rates, research shows that their fertility rates can respond to external factors, such as mast crops, meaning that when our acorns are falling, their reproductive cycles are going to respond to that, but also hunting pressure. So their fertility rates can increase when you put more hunting pressure on them, which is incredible. So these animals have adapted biologically to win the war that we're fighting on them. Of course, when they're looking for a food source, they prefer mast crops. Does anyone know what a mast crop is? Can someone pop in the chat and tell me what that is? Acorns, that's right. So I don't know about y'all, but acorns are the seeds of the trees I like to have, right? And it's really important out here in East Texas for us to maintain that diversity in our forest. And if they are coming in and they are wiping out an entire mast crop for that year, we're not establishing any new hardwood trees. And that leads to immense competition with our native species. So that in and of itself is an issue. Their rooting behavior, of course, increases erosion, but it also increases invasive species because plants like Chinese tallow actually respond really positively to rooting behavior. So you're going to see an uptick in these invasive plants where these pigs are residing and causing problems. And of course, one of the biggest issues, and I think probably the one that we don't think about the most, is our decreased water quality. So out here, we're in the water system, Black Cypress Basin, and 7 of 9 of the waterways in the Black Cypress Basin are impaired, and those impairments can be linked to the presence of feral hogs. And that's not anything to play with, and that affects people that aren't landowners. That affects everyone. I'm having a hard time moving everything around my screen so I can see my own presentation. So, of course, wild pigs are going to have an impact on our native species. There's always going to be a forced interaction at a deer feeder. Pigs are really smart. They will join your deer at the deer feeder and they will be aggressive. There have been reports, of course, that hogs can eat fawn, but they're not going to hunt them out. It's going to be a convenience issue. And that's going to be the same with things like quail eggs. They're not going to really hunt them, but if they come across them, if you're lucky enough to have a quail population, they sure will eat those. And I think that one of the most ignored aspects is that as our habitat changes, so does the impact on the things that depend on that. So our migratory songbirds are actually impacted by the presence of feral pigs, and that's not something that we think about. And of course, our reptiles and amphibians are impacted because these hogs prefer a wetland area, and there are population decline evidence where there's a large hog population. So just across the board, we don't necessarily benefit at all from these pigs' presence. Of course, here's a great example of some hog damage. In addition to what it makes your pastures look like, it's going to tear up vehicles. It's going to cost a lot of your time. And of course, time is money when you're having to go in and fix things and you're having to utilize traps and baits. If your pasture gets decimated, you may even have to come in and resprig it. Or if they come in and they tear up a newly planted pine plantation, you may have to come in and replant that too. So that, in addition, with direct competition for native wildlife, these things have a monumental economic impact for landowners, even when it's people who maybe you just maybe they're just tearing up a little bit of your pasture, but if you're spending time and you're spending money having to correct it, when we add that up across all of the landowners in the state, it's a pretty phenomenal number. So just like in every other aspect of our lives, technology is being utilized a lot in pig eradication. Drones are being used. That's super handy. You can fly over a property and you can survey and you can see where pigs are. Of course, we have cellular enabled cameras. I'm a big fan of these, and remotely operated trapping devices, all-in-one trapping units, infrared scopes, and suppressor equipped firearms. These are all things that are absolutely instrumental in our quest to eradicate these wild hogs. So, of course, we have current control methods and their impacts. The first thing people want to do is trap. And I know out here, and probably in most cases, the first thing somebody does is go buy a box trap. Box traps are super common. They will catch pigs. You'll catch pigs in a box trap. But corral traps are going to be more successful if they're set up correctly. And that just comes down to what I call the 3 C's. We want to create that environment where pigs don't feel at risk. We want to pre-bait them and condition them to that area. And then you have to capture that entire sounder. If you are using a box trap, you cannot control whether or not you capture that entire sounder. And once one of these hogs sees its buddy trapped in a box trap, it's going to take a long time to convince that pig to get back in a box trap. So evidence shows that we can achieve 70 to 80% population reduction with trapping alone, but we have to be smarter than the pigs when we're trapping. Okay, we have to, if you have a cellular or a remote controlled trap, you can't drop it on the first pig you see. We have to work hard and create these 3 C's so that way we are capturing that entire sounder and we're not creating these trap smart pigs, because they'll outsmart us every time. Of course, if you're going to use a trap, you have to use bait. We have used all kinds of things in our county trap. We typically just use corn. We've used commercial products. We've used soured corn. Sometimes we do find that we do get a pretty great response from grape flavored Kool-Aid. However, a lot of people want to use diesel fuel. We sell our pigs for human consumption. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't want to eat a pig that's been fed diesel fuel. It damages water quality. It's damaging to wildlife. Diesel fuel is just, it's not a good tactic to use. There are better options out there. Research is showing that pigs are heavily attracted to fish and vegetable scents. People say that using strawberry flavoring decreases, secondary targets. In our trap, we haven't witnessed that, but I will say using strawberry flavoring or grape flavoring seems to bring the pigs in, and I appreciate that. I see that Beverly said she lives in Kaufman County. These aerial hunts it's not an option out here in East Texas. You can't go very far and not, and see the ground because of our forest. But I know, like in a place like where my parents live in Kaufman County, maybe aerial hunts, and sure, out in West and South Texas, aerial hunts are an excellent option. Of course, we owe that to the pork chopper bill. They can kill an average of 27 hogs per hour. That is fantastic. Of course, the cost is, it's a little spendy. It's more spendy than a box trap. But the TWS, which is Texas Wildlife Services, offers aerial hunting at a reduced rate. Now, dog hunting. People go back and forth on this. A lot of people think dog hunters are part of the issue, but there has never been a single place where eradication has been achieved without the use of dogs. So once you go in and you trap your 80% and you have 20% left that have outsmarted your trap, dogs are an excellent option if you're using responsible gamesmen that are going in and harvesting the pigs. The dogs and the hunters can go where traps can't. I know when we trap, our trap is bulky, and there's some places that it's just not gonna work. So this is, it's an excellent option, but of course you run into issues with trespassing. You definitely don't want to have a bunch of, poorly trained dogs out there chasing somebody's cows. That would be bad. So there's, drawbacks, but like I said, no eradication has ever been achieved without the use of dogs. So they're an important part of this too. You can see, if any of you have trapped pigs for any amount of time, abatement can change their behavior. So no matter how hard we work, they're figuring out how to beat us every day. The more you hunt, they breed earlier, they farrow more often, they have more reliable conception rates. They have adapted to aerial gunning. Of course, they figure it out. And anytime you catch an incomplete sounder of pigs, you just created a trap smart hog. So I know out here that's a big problem, that I try to encourage landowners to just wait, see if you can get them all. I see your question in the chat. I'll answer it in just a second. I have a hard time flipping back and forth between the chat and my presentation. I'm not quite good enough for that. So all in all, you're not going to achieve excellent hog abatement without utilizing many methods. There's no one method that's going to get you 100% success. You can trap for the largest, bang for your buck. You have to be careful and you have to utilize those 3 C's. If you're out there with the box trap and you're catching 1 pig a night, you're probably not making that big of an impact. Once you've trapped, hunting to eliminate your lone boars that you didn't get caught, which I feel like we catch quite a few lone boars in our trap, and also those trap smart hogs. And you can hunt via, suppressor at night. You can hunt via dogs. I mean, that's dealer's choice on that, but if you can't use one method and have 100% success. And if you ever get 100% success, please let me know, because I don't know anyone who has. So, like I said, I'm not a hunter. This is all things that, when I came into this position, this was the issue that I was faced with. And so as a county extension agent, and if you live in Texas, you have a county extension agent, it was my job to come up with a solution. So our first goal was to educate. So we started having wild pig abatement programs, bringing in speakers. We're educating landowners on some tactics that could be beneficial. But while doing that, we're also gathering information. So how big an issue is this? Do I just have 1 or 2 locations that are eat up with these pigs, or is it really all over the, every single landowner's property across the county? And Cass County is a pretty good sized place. So the next goal is to look at the economic impact of wild pig damage in Cass County. So back in 2019, I was able to apply for a grant from Texas Wildlife Services. It has been definitely a big blessing for our office. We've gotten to do a lot of really cool things because of that. But our ultimate goal with that grant is to reduce the economic impacts of the wild pig population in our county. And what I mean by that is I want our landowners to have an option and to have information that's going to help them to spend less money and spend less time on this invasive issue. So the first thing we did, of course, was I developed a wild pig abatement task force, and I have a group of awesome volunteers. They help to basically keep our trap running. They help to educate. We had a program last week, and one of my volunteers was like, "You don't have to teach this. I've got it." And they've learned, and now they're outreaching and pushing, our methods and what we're doing. And so that damage assessment is so important. So let me see what questions I have. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Are there corral rental options or TP? Okay. So Adam is going to speak more on, different trapping options. I will say, call your county extension agent, even if they don't have a trap lease program like what my office offers. I have a list of people who also offer trapping. Yes, so I know Kaufman County has 2 that they rent out. Exactly. So, and every county does it differently. We're going to hear more about that in just a minute. So let me see how I want to show y'all, because I get really excited about it just because of the immense amount of work that went into this. Can y'all still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so like I said, I have a committee, and I have like 6 people on this committee. And we together run this 4-buster. So this is what we were able to purchase with our grant from Texas Wildlife Services. We lease this out to landowners. With that, we charge $100 a week with a 2-week minimum. The plan was, oh, we'll have you pre-bait for 10 days. We'll leave the trap. We'll catch the pigs. We'll be in and out in 2 weeks. Well, yeah, right. That's not how it's worked out. We leave it a little bit longer. We leave it until we get the job done as best we can. With that, the volunteers go out. They assemble it because, the YouTube videos, I felt like I was going to be able to do this all by myself. And I definitely overestimated my abilities. So I'm really grateful to have those volunteers. We take it out, we set it up. The landowner, if they want access to the camera, they can have access to the camera. But essentially the volunteers and I run the whole program. And when we capture the hogs, we utilize a live hog buyer. The reason that we do that is because that is just one more step in boosting our economy out here. So if somebody can make money off these hogs as opposed to letting their carcasses rot, then that's the option I'm going to go for every time. And that money, you see the red birds, Bruce, like sitting on my camera, I think. That money comes back in to the committee. And with that, of course, we're able to pay for repairs that are, of course, no matter how great a piece of equipment is, you got to repair it. But we also, we have a small bounty program. And so it started out that we were going to pay out a bounty. And that actually evolved to where now when people bring in snouts, we exchange it for tickets and a chance drawing. And we end up, giving away, gift cards to Academy or tree stands or game cameras and things of that nature. And it just keeps people out there hunting. And it also keeps us engaged with the hunting community. So that's been a really interesting deal for our office. And I think that we've all enjoyed it a lot. So does anybody have any questions? Feel free to go to the chat. Yes, Beverly, you are correct. I gave it a good try, but I definitely needed help. So I think, Ken, when we talk about aggression, it's really just the hogs are running the deer off the deer feeder. So eventually the deer aren't going to come until the hogs are gone. I don't know that we're seeing like full out battle royales in very many cases, but it's really just deterring the deer, which would be, typically your target when you put out a deer feeder. Does anyone else have any questions about our county program? If not, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mr. Ronald Barlow. He is another county agent. He's coming to us from Sabine County, and he's going to give us some information about his county program. Are you ready, Ronald?
I think I'm good. Jessica, can you hear me?
I sure can. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. I'll keep an eye on the chat if anyone has any questions. Okay, Adam said, how many pigs in the year of trapping have you removed? As of today, I hit 299, Adam. So in my head, I thought I was gonna like trap all the pigs in a year. That's not what happened. But 299, I'm not upset by that number with just one trap going.
Jessica, I'm ready when you are. Are y'all ready?
Go ahead.
All right. First, I want to thank Jessica for putting this together. You can look at me and tell that I couldn't have put this thing together online. But it's a pleasure being here. Jessica asked me to explain what we're doing in Sabine County for feral hog control. And I could talk for 3 or 4 hours, but I'll try to keep it down to about 30 minutes. And we started out, I've just been the extension agent here for a little over 3 years. When I was hired and met with the county officials, I told them the first day, I said, now I'm going to get rid of wild hogs in Sabine County. And I'm going to get rid of tallow trees and fire ants and love bugs and McCartney rose bushes and everything else that's plagued y'all for years, so that y'all won't ever be able to run me off. And well, I've been here 3.5 years and I hadn't got rid of any of them, but I do want to tell you how we are working on hogs. And I'm going to try to share this screen. Is that coming through, Jessica?
Not yet.
How
You're
about
good
now?
now.
See you loud and clear. Keep going.
Yeah, it's not letting me advance slides. There we go. Less than a year after I hired on, I had put together an ag committee to help address the issues here in Sabine County and prioritize the issues so that we could focus on various ones. And every time we sat down, wild hogs were at or very near the top of the list of problems. I got to looking around at what some other states and counties are doing. I saw the trap loan programs. I saw bounty programs in other counties, big boar contest, weekend hunts, weekend contest. A lot of people providing a lot of education resources so that landowners could help remove the population themselves. And but we did want to attack it, and we wanted to attack it hard in Sabine County. We're a small, let me show you where Sabine County is. You see us down here about the midpoint of the eastern boundary of Texas. We're a small county. We've got right at 10,000 people in the county, one of the least populated counties in the eastern half of the state. We're isolated and hemmed in by Toledo Bend Reservoir on the Sabine River on the east side of the county. On the west side of the county, we've got Sam Rayburn Lake, two of the largest lakes in the southern U.S. And then about half of our county is covered with Sabine National Forest, and probably 50% of what's left over was owned by big timber companies. Historically, besides timber production, the cotton farmers came in after the timber was cut out in the 20s and early 30s. Cotton went out in the 40s, and beef cattle and hay producers came in. And most of our cattle and hog people were taking advantage of the open range laws of the time, marking they're putting their brand on their cattle and marking their hogs' ears. And a lot of times you could walk halfway across the county without having to climb a fence. but there was still not an overpopulation of hogs at that time. And basically because even though they were open range, they were domestic hogs, and they were trapped and marketed, and there was enough demand for them on the dinner table to keep the population in check. Some did turn feral. We had the piney wood rooter hogs that were developed from what got away from the Spaniards back 200 or 300, 400 years ago in our area. And there was a need for some hog hunting, but most of our hogs out in the woods were domestic hogs. In the 1960s, when they built these 2 dams and filled these 2 lakes up, they pushed all those piney wood rooters out of the bottoms right into our hay fields and pastures and gardens and yards, so that by the late 60s, wild hogs were a bad problem in Sabine County. I can remember back in the early to mid 70s, an uncle and I built a trap out of wood we'd cut on the sawmill at the farm, just with a drop gate on it. And the first month we had it in place, we trapped 50-something hogs. Then I went off to A&M in 1978 and came back in 1983 as ag teacher here in Sabine County, and the hogs were gone. Somebody out there might be able to help explain that, but I haven't put a definitive answer on that. But we didn't have a wild hog problem in the 80s. By the 90s, the populations were growing. The timber companies were leasing out their land for hunting. The hunting clubs were paying people to bring in Russian boars and other piney wood rooters into their hunting clubs to turn them loose. So that by the late 90s and into the 2000s, they continued to grow. Can y'all still, did my screen change for y'all?
Yes.
This is a map showing hog populations in 1982. And you can see they've got my county purple on this map with the red arrow. But just to the north, 2 counties up in Panola County and Harrison County and Marion and Cass, they didn't have any documented hogs, and we had very, very few down here. By, I can't see the date at the top, but I think this was 2009 maybe. And you can see
2019.
2019. So this is very recent. And El Paso County is the only county not marked, and I think it is marked now. But the hog population has really took off in the last 30 years. We're a long ways from even Overton, which is our extension center, from College Station, Austin, San Antonio with wildlife services. So we started working on a plan that might work for us, and we came up with Operation Pork Chop. Right now we're halfway through the 3rd year of it. We started it in 2019. The meeting with my ag committee, which are mostly beef and hay producers in the county, I threw the idea out. I think we were meeting like the 3rd of January. And I said, well, we can't throw a bounty out there. We're in one of the poorest counties in the state, and there's no way to budget for that. I said, why don't we have our hog hunters and trappers or landowners, anybody that kills a wild hog, just cut the tip of the snout off, turn it in. For each snout they turn in, we put their name in a hat for a drawing and give away a prize every week and run that for a couple of months. About half my ag committee said, well, where's that money going to come from? And I said, well, I believe I can find enough local businesses to sponsor 8 weeks of it. And a few were doubtful that we could come up with $800 to make it through 8 weeks of the program. But I said, well, let's do it. I said, I'll put my neck out there and I'll make sure we've got the money. We gave away $100 that first week, and my phone started ringing from local businesses after they saw it in the newspaper, saw it on Facebook, heard it on the radio, saw it on the online news sources. But anyway, by the end of the 8-week period, we had given away $3,000 and had another $1,000 commitment from a business to put on an education seminar at the end of the program to recognize the hunters and trappers and feed everybody. We call it our wild hog supper, and we use a lot of the pork that we gather during Operation Pork Chop and feed everybody at the rodeo grounds. And we had like 125 show up that first year. But it's really grown since then. That first year we had 362 snouts turned in 8 weeks, which is just a drop in the bucket of the county's wild hog population. But like I was telling everybody, you know, this is going to grow every year, and that's 362 hogs that aren't out there making more bacon. The following year, more sponsors stepped up, and I gave away a little over $7,000. We doubled the length of the program. Each year we start it the day after the last deer season closes, when muzzle loading and youth season ends, so that there's no overlap with whitetail season. And we run it till about a week into May before it really heats up and trapping issues start developing in the East Texas heat. But last year we collected almost 500 snouts. This year we're on pace to maybe reach 600 or 700 snouts. And I'm probably going to give away a little over $10,000 this year. If you look at the right-hand side, that's the list of people that are, as of a week or so ago, that had committed prize money for that. The rules here on the right, basically, we don't care where you live as long as you're killing the hogs in Sabine County and doing it legally. And you're really going to have to work at it hard to find an illegal way to kill a hog. If you're respecting landowner rights and not violating any municipal laws, and I tell people, I don't care if you hit them with your truck. That's a dead hog. Cut the snout off, turn it in. And one purpose of that is that I'm able to collect the data as they turn it in. And by the end of this third year, I'm getting a lot of usable data as far as to be able to look and see what kind of hogs we're getting, what we might be doing to the population, where they're at, what control methods are working best. And it's really, really created some opportunities that I never even thought of to start with. You can see my collection report form here when they turn their snouts in, and I go around to the 5 businesses in the county that they can turn them into. I go around every Monday morning and pick up the snouts and the forms. And we'll do a drawing by noon on Friday. And, but anyway, so I'm collecting the data as we're going. And you can see they're telling us what age classification, what sex they are, how they're catching them, whether they're baying them up with dogs or using a thermal scope at night, and even a suppressor, snares, traps, or just saw it and shot it. And that other column there is in case they just hit it on the highway or something. We don't turn down a snout as long as that hog was killed in the county. If they are trapping it, what type of trap they're using, what type of bait they're using, when they're getting these hogs, and what part of the county they're getting them in. We do, the first time they turn some in, have them sign off that they have read and understood the rules, and a liability waiver, so they don't hold me or anybody else involved with the contest liable in case of any type of mishap while they're collecting these hogs. Businesses that have just stepped up and taken the financial load of this. And after I went out to about 10 or 12 businesses, the rest of these, most of them caught me and said, hey, I want to be in that. You know, I want, and I don't let any of them give over $100 just to keep it simple and easy, but it adds up at the end of the year. I keep it publicized. We've got a local weekly newspaper that gives us anywhere from a half to a full page every week in the paper while we're doing Operation Pork Chop, which keeps it out in front of the public. We've also got about 3 Facebook groups and online news sources that keep it out there, because as you know, anything like this, you've got to get that word out. Hog hunters and trappers, at least in Sabine County, they don't sit down and read the newspaper every week. They don't get on Facebook and online news like a larger percentage of the rest of the population might. I've run into people this year. I had a guy turned in 25 snouts a couple of weeks ago that's been here his whole life, and he had just found out about the program. But you got to get the word out. Each week when we draw a winner, this was a 13-year-old boy that had turned in 7 snouts that he had trapped on their property. That kid won $300 worth of prizes that week. That's enough to keep him going back, hoping to win another prize. With our drawings, the entire county's pitched in. This is our county judge doing a drawing last week. Our county sheriff. I try to involve all the county officials, school officials, and spread it out around the county. And that serves 2 purposes. They know it's legitimate. The hunters and trappers know it's legitimate and a legitimate drawing. And it just helps spread awareness of the program. I'll call the winner, let them pick 3 prizes off the list, whatever's remaining that week. I meet them at these businesses. Those business owners get their picture in the newspaper and all over Facebook, and the hunter and trapper does also. And like I said, the newspapers and radio station are all very, very good about keeping it out there. what surprised me is the ages on some. And I went into the schools and made presentations in the schools on the program, and that's the group that I think in the long run that we're making some long-term headway, getting these kids out involved in trapping hogs and getting rid of them. Last year, in our second year of it, local gun shop owner calls me about midway through and says, "Hey, I want to give a gun to give away to the overall winner, whoever turns in the most through the program." And that's what we gave away last year. It was about a $600 rifle. This year we're going to do the same. At our wild hog supper, like I said, we had 125 show up at the end of the first year. I printed these programs. They all got the data I had collected and a summary of everything, and came and sat through, golly, I believe it was 3 hours of demonstrations on various hog traps. And I had Dr. John Tomachek came in and really covered the basics of why we have the problem and why we need to solve it. Last year, I had Aaron Summerall, who's county agent in Matagorda County, speak, and did a fabulous job, and even brought some different traps. But we've demonstrated the boar buster and various corral trap designs, various gate designs, the pig brig, and others. And people just keep coming back. This past fall, we had to postpone it because of COVID and didn't get to do it till October, and still had almost 100 show up for the program. We don't charge anything for our education programs, and I carry a lot of tickets with me everywhere I go and stick them in people's hands, and it helps increase attendance. Last year's winner was a female, and probably 25% of our winners over the last 2.5 years have been female. And there she is getting a rifle and a check, and I think she won a total of about $1,100 that we had gathered up just for the overall winner last year. That's there in Summerall, showing some of the crowd a trap there. That's the data that we collected from the first year, 2019. You can see we had 362 total hogs turned in. And it's, a lot of the data didn't add up to what I had predicted it might. 52% of what was turned in the first year was trap, 38% was made up of dogs. That's changed last year. Let's see. Here's last year. What was trapped had dropped to 37%, and what was made up of dogs had risen to 53% of the total, with a lot more hogs being turned in. But like Jessica said in her presentation, hunting pressure and trapping pressure, and we're having to go a lot deeper into the woods to find those hogs now. I don't think we're making a real substantial impact on our overall numbers, But if we can keep that pressure and lower that breeding rate and that reproduction rate and keep those hogs moving, that eventually we might make an overall impact on the numbers. If anybody has an interest in starting anything like this up in their county, or even using a part of it, what works in our county may not work in your county, but bits and pieces of it might. We're going to continue with this as long as we can keep the interest up, and as long as we're seeing the results that we're getting. But I'd be glad to send you any and all information that I have, and feel free to call me. And there's my number and my email address. And I guess, Jessica, at this point, if anybody's got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to add those to the chat box or unmute yourself, and feel free to ask questions. I just want to say that this is a fantastic program, and I really want to use that data reporting form. I think that's fantastic.
I had a lot of help developing that form. Larry Pierce, who's on this meeting, helped me with a lot of it, and John Tomachek did also. And you might notice that we didn't have diesel to corn as an option on the form. And the reason for that is we didn't want to put anything on there that looked like it might be a suggestion. But I'm finding out that fewer and fewer people each year are dieseling their corn for their bait and their traps.
So Sandy asks, any idea if TWS still has grant money available for other counties interested in a hog abatement program?
Sandy, we received a bullbuster trap this past fall from through the TWS grant process, just like Jessica did the previous year. And I foresee that process continuing. It's a grant only available to counties, so it would have to be the trap actually belongs to the county, and the grant application was all done for the county. But we received $10,000 grant for that, but there is a limited amount of funds, and it is a very competitive grant process. And if there's anything about that I'm not aware of, anybody feel free to chime in.
I do think it's important to recognize, though, that you did Operation Pork Chop without a TWS grant. This was a totally county-driven, like community-supported program that you did prior to receiving the grant.
Correct. I did apply for a TWS grant the previous year, 2 years with this program, but didn't receive it. I didn't ask for that the second year, basically because we had decided that we wanted to retain full ownership of Operation Pork Chop, and I've even turned down sponsorship money from businesses that aren't located inside the county to maintain that, because we're proud of it, and we're proud that it's a Sabine County project. And it was It was a challenge. I'm the only extension employee in Sabine County. I don't even have a secretary. But I couldn't even begin to name the dozens of people that have helped make it happen. Lots of volunteers.
That's fantastic. So for those of you asking questions, wondering if your county has something, that maybe if your county doesn't, it might be because somebody hasn't volunteered yet. So don't forget that's always an option. And a lot of our programs just would not be as effective without, our super valuable volunteers. So if no one else has any more questions for Ronald Barlow, we're going to go ahead and move on to Adam Henry from Texas Wildlife Services.
We're going to see if I can get this running. That's going to be the tricky part. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're going to share your screen, it should be the green button down at the bottom.
Yeah. My computer decided to slow down a little bit. I hope that's not my internet slowing down. Well, we'll give it just a minute to upload, let my computer come up to everybody see that. There we go. Okay, how about now? Everybody hear me loud and clear? We're good to go?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna. Okay, so thank you, Jessica, for having me on. I appreciate you being kind enough to invite me over again, talk a little bit of hog control and hog work. For those of y'all that we're hearing a lot about TWS, so that is the Texas Wildlife Services Program. Real quick, we'll go ahead and clear that up. We are a cooperative governmental entity in the state. So most of our funding, a good portion of it comes from the federal side on USDA, APHIS, Wildlife Services, and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension is our secondary partner. So we are part of the Extension family. And we have a third wheel in there that is the Texas Wildlife Damage Management Association. In that association, those are funds that come from counties outside direct control work that we do for different entities. So your county program, say Panola, Harris, Russ County, often that eastern side over there has county trappers that are funded and work all year long in those counties. And so that's where that funding goes into, is the Texas Wildlife Damage Management Association. Y'all are sitting square right on the eastern side of our Fort Worth district. We are 61 counties small, and main office is here in downtown Fort Worth. And we have, like I said, those three counties over there together on the eastern side, Hunt County, coming back to the west, and then we have a few off to the western edge, 5 or 6 more counties over there that pay into the program. Some of you may remember us from beaver problems. We have beaver specialists that work kind of all over the district, and that number is dwindling due to funding. So it is getting harder and harder to fund those positions. So just like hog work, please talk to and we're in session. So I'd tell y'all, everybody that's looking for more money and traps, definitely talk to your state representatives, senators, and legislative sessions going on. So let's bend somebody's ear, see if we can't get some more money in the back pocket to get moving with other programs. So for well over 100 years now, since about 1915, Wildlife Services has been on the landscape in Texas, primarily starting with livestock protection, but moving into the health and human safety at airports, facilities and structures, building safety if we had animals in those buildings, crop damage. Obviously, feral hogs take the lead on our crop damage, but we even move into feral hog damage on endangered threatened species, sea turtles down on the coast, reintroducing pronghorn out in the Trans-Pecos. We're doing predator work out there. So we have our hand in quite a bit of things all throughout the state and the nation. I think I'm going to touch on some urban stuff. I know we had a really good introductory program. We're going to get into talking some more tips and tricks, but my location is in the Metroplex. So I'm primarily in the DFW area. I've got 2 automated systems running right now that hopefully pigs were there at one of them about 7:30 last night. So I'm hoping they catch the tail end of this and we'll be trapping hogs tonight in the Metroplex. So it's not just a country problem. This is in town, in the cities. Part of the Metroplex DFW airport has feral hogs. I trap them when they become a problem. So we have hogs, like that picture's not wrong. There are hogs in every county. This is indicative of what I see in the Metroplex. This was a yard over towards Lake Louisville that was totally destroyed. Probably the most destruction that I've seen in the backyard to this date. Just massive amount of destruction by feral pigs. So this is what we're facing in town. I know we see this damage, similar damage out in the countryside, but it's very unusual to see this extensive damage in a neighborhood, for one. But so the dollar wise, it starts adding up pretty quick when we start seeing this kind of damage. That sign wasn't photoshopped in. That was actually over in Tyler. We were doing a program out at the airport and happened to come down the road and see the hog damage. When I turned the corner, that safe area sign was already planted in the ground. It was very fortuitous, I guess, fortunate for us to come around that corner and see that, because that's what has become with our feral pigs in the Metroplex or in our urban areas. We don't have hunters. We don't have folks harassing them. They kind of have free reign, and this is what they do when they get into town. This is kind of over in y'all's neck of the woods, at least over in that East Texas side of the life. I want to say it's taking out Longview somewhere in that area. This was the shooting range. Dr. Higginbotham actually took this recently within the last 6 months or so, maybe sometime last year, and sent it off to everybody. And I think that's kind of indicative of what we have sometimes when we start thinking about trapping. Obviously, I think the box trap can work. Definitely see a lot of hogs caught with box traps every year, but we have to make sure our bait's right, make sure those animals are going to come to our bait. We can't forget that the hog plays 98% of the equation into trapping. They have to want to be trapped. And if they don't, it won't matter what kind of trap we have, they're not going to be trapped. So just something to think about. One thing that I do talk about, and I think we need to, especially smaller properties, is grub control. That's just one part of the puzzle when we start thinking about overall package of how we protect our properties, especially in town. Where I see this the most is grub control is key. Those hogs are looking for grubs. In that last picture, I would almost guarantee that that's what those pigs were in there looking around for. They might have had some nutsedge or something else growing that they were after, but I'd lay money that there was a grub problem. So we want to make sure that we apply grub control 2 times a year, once March, April. So kind of right now, about the middle of this month. I know this week we're getting warm. We're going to be in the 60-degree temperature range at night, at least here in the Metroplex for the next 4 or 5 days. So grass is growing. That means grubs are coming to the top. They're coming to get food and grow big and turn into June bugs. So let's get some grub control on them right now. And then again, in that September, October timeframe, let's get another treatment of grub control on and get them killed for the winter before they hibernate and we can't touch them with our pesticides, and cut back our water just a little bit. Make sure we don't overwater. Some of that has been a real problem is cutting back the water. Mother Nature is giving us a little bit right now. So just be sparing on the water and we should be good to go. But if we have another year with these guys, I don't know about y'all, but this year I did not see a lot of mass production. I know we touched on that. Acorns were a big one in our conversation at the very beginning of the program, but this was 2 years ago, and I just got a beep. I got hogs in a trap right now, so it might be productive tonight. If we don't have acorns, those animals are looking for something else. They are more conducive to go into the trap, and it makes trapping just all that much more easier. But this was 2 years ago, 2020 or 2019, October 2019. And as you can see in that picture, those 5 right there are just the ones that were in focus. I have 6 or 7 more that are out of focus and fuzzy that I see, but it looked like somebody dumped a pile of marbles out at every oak tree that I came to in 2019. It was very tough. The animals had plenty of food. Getting them in traps is tough. So please remember that we are at the mercy of Mother Nature, and when she's given a bountiful winter, the animals are going to take it and really not respond to the trapping. So just something to think about. I wouldn't have you out there raking them all up. It'd be nice if somebody made us a tool that we could go gather all those up and put them inside our trap. That's definitely a technique that would be great to capitalize on. But I doubt we're gonna have that tool for everywhere. But just something to remember. Pay attention to what's going on with your oak trees and your pecans and things like that are making mast, and see what the winter's going to hold as far as food source. It's been very good. Hogs have turned on. Like I said, I've got hogs in a trap right now that are coming, and they're responding really well to corn right now. So again, they're willing individuals, so we can get them caught. So again, this is that same time frame. Again, that looked like a bucket of marbles on the ground. Some things we talk about the grub control, fencing. I noticed in one of the chat box that we talked about if hog damage was if there was any hog damage, it warranted trapping or fencing is what my comment was to that question. I really think that we need to talk about fencing. It doesn't have to be wild and crazy. Again, it's a long-term solution. A lot of times when I talk about fencing, everybody thinks right now I have to have the whole entire circumference of the property fenced. But I don't think we do. I think we need to be strategic about it. You just have to start. Make it a 5-year plan, make it a 10-year plan. It's your property, but start something. Start at the front gate and start working your way right or left, and just pick a side and go down. One thing we have to remember is that fences act like directional devices. So when the pigs hit them and they turn and come to our traps, they can force them and funnel them right into our traps, especially if we use natural barriers and things like that in our fencing structure. It may be a very beneficial tool to your trapping endeavor. It may help you be more efficient at your trapping. This is a picture here in Irving at a preparatory school. That is a brand new soccer field put in last summer, 2020 summer. And they had another field that they used this electric fence on when they had it repaired, but the hogs were tearing it up. I talked to them about electric fencing. They put it up, and the first field had 0 damage after they got the electric fencing up, and we started doing some trapping and trying to catch those pigs. Again, single bore hogs, they had their mind on something that they wanted in that field, and they were going for it. Once we put the electric fence on this new field, again, they had just a little bit of damage when they first started, and they got the fence up within days, and all the damage stopped. So since then, they've decided to go ahead and put a permanent chain link fence up for the kids. Again, it's a school, so this was temporary stopgap, very cheap, very minimal. I think certainly under $500 to fence off this whole soccer field. Again, this is a standard soccer football field, 100 yards long, 110, something like that. So plenty of room to fence off. And so certainly something that within everybody's means to get some hot wire and use that fence. This is a cooperator out in Erath County, his 3-strand fence to keep hogs out of his corn. And this is silage corn. So we're feeding a lot of the dairy industry and cows in the dairy. It's been very effective to keep the hogs out. It does keep obviously some smaller ones. If I look at this other picture right here, I would have him drop that bottom wire just a little bit to maybe keep the little bitty pigs out. But if mama's not in there, little pigs aren't usually sticking around too much. So it does very good work. It doesn't keep them all out all the time, but it does do pretty good. When we add some other things to that electric fence, now we have what we're calling turbo fladgery. This has been used in some of our research with wolves and shown very good results with keeping wolves out of sheep. Again, electric fence with the flagging, and they're starting some research on it, incorporating it with hogs now, feral hogs in Tennessee, Kentucky. Our state program there is starting that program and kind of looking at that, seeing what kind of benefits that might be to the producers. Obviously, we've seen it work here in this situation. I think adding a few flags to this and we'd have the exact same thing they're trying to incorporate in a research project. So it's something that we've seen on the landscape. Anybody doing rotational grazing already probably has most of this stuff going for their livestock. It'd be very minimal to get it going, keeping pigs out and setting your wire the right height and everything. Permanent field fencing, obviously this is permanent solution. This is over at the prison over in Tennessee Colony. This is the hog barn right there behind that fence, and that's keeping feral pigs out of their domestic swine production going on there. Very, very cost-effective fence. It doesn't have to be anything wild and crazy. Again, when we talk about height, the only reason why it's 4 feet is because that's the way the roll came. We could get by with probably about a 3-foot fence, so we don't have to be very vertically high. Just has to be good and tight, good and strong. As you notice in that picture, we've got a bottom barbed wire and a top barb, standard field fencing with mesh wire. Very standard rudimentary fence, but it's being very effective at their facility. This is another one I pulled off of another location. They added an electric fence to it. So all the things I just talked about, we've incorporated them, a permanent fence with an electric fence, and we've got turbo fencing, I guess we need to call it at this point. So that's something that we could, certainly do, say outside of a yard. If you had something behind that fence to protect, it would be useful and beneficial to protect it. But again, the benefits of permanent fencing are there. This is a short fence in a neighborhood up here in South Lake, and they core property on the right, just a utility fence, 3-foot tall utility fence, and they use T-posts and they spray painted them brown. They blend in really well right now. And when this picture was taken in the wintertime, you really can't even see them in the spring when it's green. You really can't see the fence, but it's something that was cost effective for their neighborhood, for their HOA, to keep the pigs out of the yard. So fencing is a very good tool. Again, wrought iron, when we get into those neighborhoods that really have to have it, it's not something that I talk about for rural landscape, but if you wanted it, it is a very effective tool. I need to get a picture where I'm working right now. They have this kind of mesh plus a short mesh to keep the snakes out of the backyard too. So proving that fencing can work. Again, another picture of fencing. This is at the Abilene Zoo on the bush pig exhibit. So fencing is going to be another tool in that toolbox as we get moving. I know we already kind of covered some of this, so I'm going to skip a lot of this. State laws, obviously, as long as you're hunting on property with landowner permission and it's not public state land, you do not need a hunting license. No holds barred, like we said from the other two presenters. It's really going to take a concerted effort to really be outside the law on killing pigs right now in the state of Texas. It can happen. We just saw an episode of the Game Warden show, Lone Star Law, where they had feral pig dummies out in Red River County and were catching road hunters shooting feral pigs off the side of the road. So if the pig's not moving, don't shoot at it from the road. That's a bad deal. Obviously, we know about the transportation laws. That's what we're doing there in Cass County in that program, hauling those pigs to a facility. But again, holding facility that's approved, recognized slaughter facility, authorized hunting preserve, and there's some laws to look in
there as well. I'm not sure what our current price is right now, but I don't believe we're at that 60 cents by any means. I'm pretty sure we are well back of that 60 cents right now. We may be in that 30 cents the last time I checked it. So as we saw in our pictures, we talk about those box traps. I think they're a pretty good tool if they're working for you. Again, each land is going to dictate what kind of trap we're going to have. There are 10 hogs caught in this trap. This was a trap that I use when I've got to get in behind the backyard. And it's very effective at being mobile in that environment. But again, it's how we bait that. So let's delve into the techniques on how we bait this box trap. If this is what you have, any trap catching a hog is still a good trap in my world. But when we pre-bait this trap, I'm going to open these 2 doors on the right side of this trap. I'm going to leave one of those 3 doors down, permanently down, just so it's a structure so the pigs get used to rubbing against it and they hear it move, but it's got a little slack in it so it makes noise. I'm going to lift those other 2 doors just on the right side up. You could do the left side. I just like the right side. It's just the way I choose it. I'm going to leave them up. We're going to put corn from the way out in front, say 6 feet out in front. I'm going to put corn all the way just about to the back of that trap when I pre-bait a trap. Once the pigs clean all the corn up all the way to the back, we're going to keep pre-baiting it, adding corn. I want to watch those pigs physically eat corn all the way to the back of the trap. But when I get ready to set that door, I'm going to do it in stages. I'm going to drop the middle door about 3 or 4 days into it, or depending on how the pigs are reacting to the trap, I'm going to shut that middle door. Once we start cleaning that corn up again and everybody's back into eating into the trap, we're going to get ready to bait for a catch. Now, all of my corn only goes to the middle of the trap. So when I'm going to bait this trap to catch, the 3rd door comes down. It's almost on the ground. I'll prop it open about 6-8 inches just so they can get their nose in it. I still put corn right out here in front, about the front bar, and I'll put corn to the halfway point of the trap. Don't put it in the back, because if you put corn all the way to the back, those pigs will walk around the back side of this trap and they won't find your door. So sometimes when we start talking about how we're using tools, it's us misusing the tool or not understanding what the animals are seeing. The closest they can get to that corn is where they want to be. So if we put it right at the back, they're going to walk around the back and they won't ever walk in. So sometimes it's not trap shy, it's trapper shy or trapper dumb. We put the corn in the wrong place. So the animals just did what animals do. And we have to understand that. So no more than halfway to the back of the box, corn right out here in the front, and we're gonna feed up and let them come right in and walk in on their own. Once we make that catch, so this group of pigs, I caught them, we dispatched them in the trap, I hauled them off, I opened both doors up, I went right back to my pre-bait protocol, put corn in that trap, let them get used to the next batch, whoever was coming in, get used to coming back into that trap, and we wound up catching more pigs in that trap. So it can be very effective. We just have to be on our A game and make sure that we're not creating a problem when we don't need to have that problem. Circle traps, again, very cost effective, very good tool. We got a county trapper down in Liberty County for 2020, caught 1,500 pigs in circle traps. No mechanical head gate, no cellular traps, just this, a few panels put together, T-posts, and that little flap right there, the overlap on the flap, took 1,500 pigs out of Liberty County with a trap like that. So it can be as mild or wild as you want to get it. But again, it's how we pre-bait the trap, how we let the pigs tell us when we're going to catch them, and as to how successful we are. This is a door. I use this door just to kind of talk about the myth of narrow doors and tall doors and big wide doors. This is a 2 foot by 2 foot wide door. It is in the city of Grand Prairie, and it was built by their hands at their maintenance shop. The trap is a normal 30-foot diameter trap. It's a giant, big trap. They pre-baited this trap for a week, and somehow the door got shut on them.
when they weren't expecting to catch pigs, and all the pigs walked into the trap. So we had 25, 30 pigs come into that trap. They all pushed on that door. They all got into the trap. Nobody had a problem. Everybody was standing in the trap when I got there. We even had some new pigs walking down the canal system to us as we were standing there sorting out pigs, and we're able to capitalize on them. And we dispatched both of those pigs coming to us from the other side of the fence as they were walking up to us. So gates, again, we can have big, wide, small, short. Let's don't get hung up on what kind of gate it's got to be. Let's just stick to our standard methods and keep doing what we're doing and making sure we're moving in the right direction. I do use a bigger, wider gate. That is a 5 foot tall, 4 foot wide swing gate, mainly because I'm a big dude, 6'2", 300 pounds at this point in life. So crawling through that little bitty guy right there makes it tough on me, and getting pigs back out that door makes it tough. But as you can see, it looks just like the regular part of the door when it comes shut, regular part of the trap. Nothing wild and crazy. It's a cheap door to make. We use just standard square tubing and can be very effective with catching pigs. Again, how we bait the trap determines how successful we're going to be. With this door, we're going to use a tripwire. This is animal activated still. We hadn't got mild and wild. Just a standard little wire latch holding the door with a tripwire. It's hard to see there, but we've got a piece of spider wire coming all the way back to this little pile of corn. And it runs kind of diagonally right there off that last T-post, right over the top of that corn, so that we can limit where our trap gets tripped at. We don't have a tripwire running horizontally across the trap. It's coming straight down. So we've narrowed down our tripwire, or our pan, if you will, and how sensitive our trap is. So it can be very effective at getting everybody in the door, so that everybody's at the table when the door shuts and we can catch everybody. Pre-baiting, goodness gracious, that's the biggest key, right? We've got to have hogs coming to bait. We've got to have them on something. One technique we're using, there's several YouTube videos on it, is a roll barrel. And we put a little corn in there, drill some holes, tie it to a T-post, and let the hogs show us when they're ready to get caught. So we've put these out ahead of ourselves when we have enough property to get out ahead of ourselves on, and we can start wrapping the trap almost right in that perfect roll circle right there, and get it baited up, and we can start catching pigs. We can use that roll barrel as a trigger. We can, we've seen the tire. This is just another iteration of that. We're going to use that same spider wire, come right down into the hole in the barrel, put a little pre-bait out in front of us, between us and the door. This sits all the way at the back of the trap. When they push on that and start rolling that barrel to get the corn out of it, it pulls the trigger on our door and lets the door get shut. So very effective tool, low cost, pretty easy solution to making an animal activated trigger. If we put enough corn in the barrel, it offers us another solution to our non-target catch. The deer can't push it around if we get enough corn in there, and the raccoons can't get to the corn, so we limit having raccoons messing around with our barrel, especially if we keep it full in the beginning and we train them that there's nothing here for them. They don't really stick around looking for corn. They'll come through, get what's on the ground, and move on. Works out pretty good. So here's that same door. Again, 5 foot tall, 4 foot wide. You've got some tabs on the side of it that make it a full 5x5 kind of configuration, and that's so that when you put your panel can overlap right there on those flanges, and you have a place to tie to the second upright on your panel. And very cheap door, $50. We get into the rigid panel world. Here's some rigid panels that, again, $50, $60 worth of material to put them up. We can be very cost effective, and we can get 10 of them. We've got a full 30-foot circumference trap with a side swinging door hooked onto it, and we're getting real close to that automated trap system. This is a system. This is the same kind of configuration with that door, with an automated trap system hooked to it, and we can get everybody in the trap, making sure everybody's there, and we can have fun and catch the whole group. Again, we can have plenty of room with a giant trap, get everybody in, no problem. Oop. Froze up just a little bit. Trying to keep her to that 30-minute mark for you. Trying to talk as fast as I can. Here we go. So I know we've touched about this, that, whoa, back up, I'm not ready. I hit too many forward buttons. Everybody still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My computer slowed down real good. So as we have here, there we go. Maybe I can go forward again. Okay, so as we have, this is Borebuster, what, like 1.5 somewhere, or 1.0, and now we're at Borebuster 2.6 or 3.0, something like that. But this was as close to the original version of Borebuster. Y'all have this in your county. Again, it's a cellular activated trap, or monitored trap really, and cell phone service is the key. I think we'd all agree that you've got to have good cell phone service. We start adding automated systems. We have to have really, really good cell phone service to make them all work, because now we're running real-time video, and it starts burning up a lot more data, and we've got to have enough network to support it. So definitely, before you're going to go buy one of these on your own, check your property. Make sure you have a location that has excellent cell phone service, because maybe an animal activated trap might be a little bit better for you than a cellular activated. We can still be very effective. Again, this is a cellular trap system hooked to a corral trap. This is the old style wireless traps system. Very effective tool that I used here in Metroplex. This is a picture you got. This was back in the text picture days. So you've got a text picture, and then you had to react to that text picture before you trapped it. Again, I hooked it to box traps and could catch single pigs. Oh, come on, camera. There you go. That old adage, obviously one big pig in a box trap, that's all you're going to catch. And that's all I did catch in this one. But again, hook the automated system to it. We could turn that box trap that we already had into a human monitored trap. And let me turn that time frame off. But a couple nights later, we had mom and all the piglets show up, and we caught them all in that box trap. Again, we added the human activation, so we made it more efficient. And it was a trap that I could get into a location and be effective with the addition of an animal activated trap. Obviously, again, guys, Mild to Wild, we've talked about them all. And touch on, this is a Jaeger Pro system. This is what you're going to see from their camera. They do have some real-time video coming out that's going to be part of the Farm Bill project going on. 18 of their new traps with real-time video were just delivered the other day. So that should be coming out here pretty quick. Game Changer, giant portable trap. Game Changer Junior, a little bit smaller, still portable. Again, all cellular activated and very effective tools. Do we need to touch base on snares and things like that real quick? I know I just hit the 30-minute mark right there. Any questions?
The audience. Does anybody want to hear about that? If so, feel free to unmute or jump in the chat.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. No, I don't want to take you away from everybody else, but yeah. So to define that excellent cell phone service, I think you got to have at least three solid bars probably to make that work out real good. At least that's what I'm gonna pick on. Yep, the latest one comes with the color motion. So they are making advancements in our cellular service, just something to be aware of. Let's touch on snares real quick. I'll hit the bases on that. So 332nd 1/8 inch aircraft cable. There's two different twist rates the 7x7 twist, which is your universal. It's kind of the general duty catch-all snare material style of twist. It's the baseline that we use on all of our snares. There is a 1x19 twist it's a little bit more rigid. It has higher tensile strength. There are some snare makers that do make hog snares in that diameter and that style of cable, and both of them are very effective. Can be very effective. Yeah, so I'm seeing the chat now, and everybody's answering those questions for you that are using them in county. So one thing about our snare, so we're going to use 2 little clips, one right behind the lock, one in front out here about 2/3 of the way out, and then we're going to fasten it a little bit right here. I don't have a tail on it because this was for the picture for demonstration purposes. My computer just slowed down on me again. Oop. Okay, well, let me keep talking. Can everybody still hear me, or am I losing voice too? Again. There we go. Well, there we go. Okay, so that's our clip. It's basically just a piece of 16 gauge wire that we're going to make to hold that. Nothing special, but it is very effective. We can wrap a wire around a telephone pole since they like to rub on telephone poles. We can put a U in the bend in the wire, crimp it down right behind that lock. We can use the running W so that it'll pull away as well. And we can set that snare up something just like that against that pole. Again, tie your tab end off on either a drag or something permanent. Don't tie it to the fence unless you got a really good quality fence. We don't want to be fence builders. We want to be hog catchers. So get that animal off of the fence. Something similar right here, what we're doing. Obviously, we own or have access to both sides of the fence. Make sure this is not a perimeter fence that you're putting a drag on, so that, and keep it on your property, not on the neighbors if you don't have permission. But that log we're going to tie up to the bottom of the snare. That pig can go off and get tangled, and we can load him up in the old lady's car and take him off to the sale barn and get paid for him. He's a pretty good pig. So very effective tool. Get them off of the fences. Don't tie a pig that big, tear that whole fence up, and we'd spend 2 days fixing fence for somebody we didn't really need to. So just be smart about the snares. They can catch other animals, non-targets. We're going to catch deer. You're going to catch raccoons, skunks, armadillos, maybe. Bobcats, other critters are going to get caught. Eventually, you're going to catch a deer. So just be mindful of that. Check them regularly. Don't leave them out there for weeks at a time unchecked, and be smart about it. They're a very effective tool. So I know we touched on helicopters real quick. Wildlife Services does do helicopter work. It's a little bit of a misnomer. We might offer it at a reduced rate, but it's just kind of the rate that we offer it. Understanding that East Texas is going to be less than stellar results if a flying project is put together. We're usually years out, at least a solid year to plan one and get enough property. We're looking for a minimum of 10,000 acres usually when we put a project together, just so we have enough country to fly and do good. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the helicopter. I think everybody thinks you see all and kill all when you're in the helicopter, and it doesn't necessarily work that way. If that was the case, we've got 300, 400 private helicopter folks flying around in the state that are offering service. Eventually, they'd run out of hogs at this point. It just doesn't work that way. Pigs get smart to the helicopter. They stop and look up at it, or they hunker down underneath some cedar trees. Underneath those oaks, they run out behind you when you fly over them. So there's a lot of ways that they can evade the helicopter. It's not the end all be all, but it is a good tool. It's a good way to kill numbers. 53% of our annual take in 2017 was with aircraft. Again, it's cheap per hour flown. When you figure humans on the ground, you cover more country. So it is a good way to see lots and lots of the state. But as you can see, that's a breakdown of how we catch pigs. A lot of snares, a little bit of snares, traps. We do equal amounts of shooting at night with thermal. This is private helicopter take for 10 years from 2007 to 2017. As you can see, even those private guys are only bringing in about 40,000 pigs, and total for what Wildlife Services is 28,000. So we're not too far off that mark. This year we'll be up closer to 33,000 for 2020 when our numbers are totaled, and we're going to be right there on their heels. So just one agency doing that is pretty spectacular. As a whole, shooting can be effective. Again, nighttime shooting. This is a graph of what our nighttime hours are. When we started adding in spotlight night vision, really should be thermal. So when we started adding that technology about 2014, you see a marked increase in our nighttime operations. Even 2016, we just skyrocketed. So it is something that we are taking advantage of. It is a very effective tool when we can get out there in multiple teams or different platforms. One platform that we don't talk a lot about is using a side-by-side to travel and traverse country and spot pigs from, and actually use the buggy to and the thermal scopes to eradicate pigs on property. Very effective tool. One thing we have to talk about is making sure we identify our target. Sometimes it's tough. Obviously, these pictures are very good, clear pictures, and we can identify what we're seeing. This one is a clear enough picture. It was on the same night as the other one. At a distance, skunks look bigger than they are, but that was obviously a skunk. You can see how the tail kind of fades out. And when we get into higher humidity, armadillos look ginormous in a thermal scope. So making sure that you're seeing and identifying your target before you kill it. Are these the neighbor's blue heelers, German shepherds, or are these coyotes? You know, that's a tough one. In the middle of summer, this gets tougher because your clarity of your picture starts degrading. So it's something to think about, making sure we can identify our target, or we have a scope quality enough or high enough resolution that it will do for us what we need it to do. Very important, making sure our bullets stay on our property. Projectile trespass is an offense that game wardens will write you a ticket for. And we've talked on dogs. There has been no project that eradicated pigs on any area without a dog. Very neat tool to have. They are fun to run. Again, we need to understand what their role is in this, and making sure we use it appropriately. Again, all of these are tools in your toolbox. Not any one of them is going to do you the best thing. You're going to have to incorporate multiple tools. So all the way clear back to grub control and fencing, all of that is tools in your toolbox, along with your cooperative efforts. We've heard from 2 county programs that they've, for pennies on the dollar, they put together abatement programs that are catching pigs and removing them. A county trapper position or program to a county is about $3,200 a month with our Wildlife Services program. That is a cost share, so that's half of the money that goes into hiring a single person for that job, and they are in that county working 40 hours a week for 365 days. So that's the cost. So any of these county programs, when we add one more thing on that county agent, that's always good. I'm sure that's what the judges are saying, but they have done pretty good program. I commend everybody for that. That's pretty neat hearing about everybody's program. So we still don't have toxicants. We don't have warfarin. That was the first one that came out. Sodium nitrite still in development. Again, everybody's saying 5 years. They've been saying 5 years since 2010, and we're rolling on 2021. So I think the best poison we have right now is lead poisoning or the slaughter facility. That's what we have on hand, and that's what we need to start using. Traps and all of the other tools can be effective. You just have to keep trudging, keep working on it. Again, those problems with budgets, manpower, what are we going to do with the pigs once we catch them? We're going to take them to slaughter, or we're going to kill them right there on the spot. Just some things to think about. sustained effort. Can we keep that fight going up? Like I said, we've got a county trapper out in the western side of our district that did remove 3,000 pigs with strictly night vision, thermal, and a buggy. So, and that's the only tool they use for the last couple of years. So he's able to work farm country with thermal and a buggy and be very effective at removing pigs. So there are some plateaus to reach, but don't take for granted the pigs that y'all removed. I think any pig off the landscape, when we start factoring in sows of 299 for Cass County, that there's at least half of those that were females. So multiply that by 10. So half by 10, and we've doubled what, we've stopped that many pigs from being on the landscape. When we start adding those birth rates and things like that, it goes exponentially through the roof. So any pig off the landscape is a good pig. So I'll jump out of this and look at our chat box, make sure there's no questions that I missed while we were working this over.
Now's a great time to ask questions, y'all. You can unmute or you can go to the chat box.
Let's see. So thermal scopes recommendation. Pulsar's been pretty good. We run a lot of the pulsars. Mainly it's a budgetary thing. They're within the price point of the government, so we can swipe a credit card and buy one. Trigicon, some of the newer stuff. There's a new one that I just saw. One of the guys is running. It's pretty good. So I'll have to get all my. You would ask me that question, and then I couldn't give you a name on the tip of my tongue right now. Trigicon's been in the game a long while. They're a decent scope. I think we have to remember battery life is the big one. So anything that is going to have a rechargeable battery option is going to save you money. 1, 2, 3 batteries are very expensive. ATN's been around. I see another one. I like Pulsar, but ATN's new. ATN's not new. They've been around a while. They've been working at it for a good while on the thermal. You may be seeing new advertisements, but nothing wrong with them. If that's where your price point is, just make sure that you get the best one of them that you can afford. Just like rifle scopes or any other tools, buy the best that you can afford and cry once and get good quality. So.
All right, if there's no other questions for Adam,
Okay.
Go ahead, and y'all are missing out on opportunity. Guys, a wealth of knowledge. But if y'all don't have any more questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to Josh Gaskamp. He is the Wildlife and Range Consultant for the Noble Research Institute.
Okay. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, let me reshare that then. I thought I may have lost you. And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you again, Jessica, for having me. I want to provide a little bit of context here. I'm going to repeat a few things that have been said probably, but I want to provide a little bit of context. I am in Ardmore, Oklahoma, is where the Noble Research Institute is focused. Currently, we have a kind of I wouldn't call it a feral swine program, but we've done research in the area of feral swine control We do some consulting, some level of consulting with a lot of the states in the country. It's not just this is not just a problem centric to Oklahoma and Texas. And so we do a lot of consulting with state agencies, with departments of ag across the country, as well as wildlife departments. I want to give a little bit of context about our problem here in Oklahoma. So you may see some of the similar damage slides that you've seen in other presentations tonight. But basically their status in Oklahoma, we just call them an ecological train wreck. I haven't found a redeeming quality for feral swine just yet. Some of the damages we see are very similar to what you guys see, damage to lawns and pastures and rangelands, interaction with livestock species and potential for disease spread, things of that nature. Somebody earlier mentioned endangered species. Feral swine are detrimental to ground nesting birds, not necessarily because they're eating the eggs. Now, obviously, as Jessica mentioned earlier, they will eat an egg if they come across one. But they're more detrimental in terms of damaging of those habitats, the sensitive habitats for some of those birds. Right here along the Texas-Oklahoma border, we have this bird, interior least tern. It just finally got delisted, but it was a federally listed endangered species. And if I took you guys to one of the farms that we operate on the Red River in Love County, Oklahoma, it looks like landmines have gone off on our sandbars. Pigs are down there rooting in wetland type areas and the sandbars where these birds nest and creating unsuitable habitat for that nesting behavior. The speculated feral hog density in Oklahoma, this is kind of a long outdated. We did some surveys back in 2007 of various agencies in the state to determine where our pig populations were in Oklahoma. I'd venture to say Texas and Oklahoma, the hot spot is the Red River for both states. And so, you can obviously see in this map that we have highest densities down there along the southern border on the Red River. I would venture to say our population in Oklahoma is well above 1 million pigs at this point. Again, this is some repeats, but I want to make a couple extra points. Again, feral swine are non-native. They whether they're feral animals, whether they're Eurasian wild boar that were released for hunting, or they were, or a combination thereof. Those animals are not native here. And, you take an animal in its native environment from Europe and Asia. If you look at their reproductive rates over there, they have on average 1 to 1.5 litters a year. Typically, there's 3 or 4 piglets in a litter. There are natural controls in those environments for those animals. When you bring them over here to the United States and then breed them for certain traits like high fecundity and rapid growth, and then subsequently release them on the landscape, we kind of have a super pig. And so research shows when you compare the data from Eurasian wild boar to the feral swine in the United States, we do have a more reproductive animal, and we're seeing that in the vast, the range expansion as well as densities of pigs in our various states. Reasons for the rapid expansion, again, they're habitat generalists. There's not an environment we can put a pig in. They can't really survive. There is research that shows that pigs can survive for 3 days without water. It's not ideal. It's not the best scenario for a wild pig, but they certainly can survive in some pretty harsh environments. They have an opportunistic diet, will pretty much eat anything with a calorie. Again, that high reproductive potential, low natural mortality. And back to the high fecundity, but because of their reproductive potential, I think Jessica pointed out we needed 66% control is needed on an annual basis in order to kind of maintain status quo. There are other studies in different states like Missouri that actually suggest that 82% control is needed on an annual basis. And so the fact of the matter is we have a lot of pigs to control to ever reach this mark. I'm not naive in the fact that I believe we're going to eradicate pigs in the United States. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But that is our goal with the Institute. That is what we are working towards. We're trying to help define solutions for state agencies to use. We know it's not going to happen, but we want to help in any way we can. So what's being promoted most often, I see it a lot in the presentation today. I don't disagree with it, but what's being promoted mostly in terms of hog control is this integrated approach, using all these techniques in unison in order to achieve a cumulative effect. So using dogs and traps and snares and hunting and aerial gunning and you know, all the tools in our tool belt. Again, I don't agree with that approach so long as it is a strategic approach, and I'll tell you why, and hopefully you guys will get that before the end of my presentation. So I want to ask the question, are some of these techniques potentially more harmful than they are good as a tool in our tool belt? And should we continue promoting the use of all the techniques in our tool belt? So those are a couple questions I want you to think about as we go through this presentation. You know, and hopefully we'll kind of get to an answer together at the end. First off, hunting is not a control option by itself in most cases. Now, where there's a single boar, you know, in a field in the Metroplex, or maybe you're in El Paso County and you don't have very many pigs yet, but hunting is in general not a control option. You know, it may be one of those follow-up control options. I want to point out, this is a slide. Obviously, this isn't Texas. This isn't even Oklahoma. But the state of Tennessee did some work years ago and to put this slide together, and basically wanted to show the depiction. They wanted to illustrate what happened in their state in terms of introducing hog hunting into the hog hunting culture into the state. So this is a time-lapse view of the wild hog range expansion in Tennessee. The following is 50 plus years of no hunting statewide hog regulations. So hog hunting was only permitted in the areas that there were known populations of pigs. So these two areas in red, they knew pigs were in those areas, so they allowed landowners to shoot at will, but you couldn't go out and recreate for pigs in the state. And so here's what happened in 50 years. Those populations all obviously expanded, densities got higher, were forced outward to utilize other areas of the state. So what they decided, well, the locals in these areas aren't controlling the pigs, really. I mean, they may be shooting a few and bringing some in for bounties and things like that, but they're really not controlling the pigs with this hunting method. And so what we need to do is bring hunters from across the state. You know, we want people from over here in Western Tennessee to come hunt our pigs over here. So maybe we can actually put a bigger dent in them. And so the Wildlife Agency authorized a statewide year-round, no-limit hog hunting season. And in just 10 years, this is what happened. Now, pigs don't have wings. They don't fly, but they trailer really well, and they get hauled across the state and introduced to new areas. And we already pointed out that pigs you can't really introduce them to an environment they won't flourish in. And so what really happened in this scenario is we created this hog hunting culture. Hog hunting's fun. I love it. I mean, in fact, if we put a season and a bag limit on hogs in Oklahoma, we could probably poach them out of existence here. But the fact is they're fun to hunt. It becomes a recreational opportunity. And those compounding effects that happen after you tie economic incentives to wild hogs is common, and it happens in very similar ways that it happened to the way it happened in Tennessee. And we're seeing that in a lot of scenarios across the country, and including in our home state here in Oklahoma. I'll discuss a little bit about box traps. You know, a lot of this has been covered, but they come in all shapes and sizes. There's various advantages and disadvantages. Most notably, they're very fast to set up. They're portable. But by and large, they do catch very few hogs at a time. You know, you still have non-target captures. You have with these traps, like Adam pointed out, you've got a habituation period. So you pre-bait for several days, get the pigs used to it, and then eventually you can trap those pigs. Now, we work with a whole lot of landowners, and this is the type of trap I go to see a property, and it looks like a grazing enclosure in the field. They used it one time, and they promoted this trap shy behavior in the rest of the population. You know, we work with a lot of landowners, and the integrated approach by itself is a great concept, but to be realistic, to be frankly honest, the average landowner is going to gravitate to the cheapest option first. And where Adam and myself and probably a handful of you guys on this phone call or on this meeting can probably trap pigs in a tuna can, that's not the majority of the population, our trapping population out there. And so when the average population, when the consumer gets out there and gets on the internet and looks for trapping techniques, they find the cheapest option. They don't go get an education first, they just use it. And so we have to really think about whether we need to continue promoting tools like the box trap. Corral traps, again, disadvantages and advantages associated with those. They do capture larger groups. The gates are somewhat portable, but I always ask the question when I give this presentation in person, who likes to drive T-posts? And then I also ask the question, who likes to pull T-posts? Because again, when I go visit a producer's property, if he's got a corral trap, they tend to try to trap in the same location over and over again, so they don't have to pull the T-posts out and relocate the trap. That's why some of these more, panel style traps are becoming more and more popular. But these traps look like grazing enclosures when I go visit a property as well. They're grown up with weeds. They haven't trapped but one sounder of pigs in them in their existence, and now they're not being utilized and they're not effective anymore. So the traps are somewhat less portable because of that. There is a setup time and expense. It's going to take a person an hour and a half to wire these panels to T-posts and fully set this trap up. You do have those non-target captures like deer and turkeys that will trigger the traps. And, we set up some research years ago to try to see if we could get pigs to walk through these doors. Even though these doors were marketed in a way that they catch pigs after the doors are closed, we didn't document a single instance on our trap-wary pigs population that we were working with here in southern Oklahoma. And again, with this trap, you've got that habituation period. You still have trap-shy hogs. Not certain if this video is going to play for you guys. Let's give it a second to load. Can somebody unmute and let me know if you're seeing video?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, all right. So fortunately, I got real lucky here. I had 3 boars coming to this trap location. This is a polywire fence kind of stretched around it to keep the cattle out of it. This was a double-sided trap, but fortunately, I caught all 3 of these pigs in this corral trap. But I want you to imagine there were 15 other pigs outside of that trap when this event took place. There's no sound associated with this video, but I promise you this isn't a silent event. There's metal clanging. These pigs are squealing. There's a lot of racket. And even though we go through the right processes to pre-bait and to lure the pigs into the traps, I wouldn't say this was the best technique where that bait's placed right there at the door. But even though we as trappers have gone through the appropriate procedures to get those pigs, the entire group in the trap, they're still pigs and they're going to be unpredictable at times. And anytime I educate one pig, what have I essentially done there? If I had 15 outside and I caught 3, I essentially caught the 3 most naive, dumbest ones, and I allowed the 15 smartest ones to go on and do the breeding from now on. And so much like we've selected, for certain traits in our genetics for the domestic pork market, like high fecundity and rapid growth, we are now actually selecting for smarter pigs in our wild populations. And so that is why we're seeing smarter and smarter pigs. That's why you can go into a brand new area and set up a trap and still have some challenge in catching those pigs, because we are promoting that trap shy behavior in our new populations. I won't go through this. I love the 3 C's that Jessica put together. Basically, those 3 C's say the same thing that all these trapping BMPs on this slide say. The point is it's not as simple as buying a trap and dropping it on the ground. Get educated, learn how to properly trap pigs. Get with those wild. If you don't know and you want to learn, talk to your wildlife services guy, like guys like Adam. They'll probably, when they're in your area, they'll stop by and show you what you're doing wrong, help you. Those guys are trapping wizards, and so I use the wildlife services guys to help some of our producers out on a daily basis. So this trap wariness, and here I'm going to get into some of the research in just a little bit that we've been doing at Noble. This trap wariness is leading to alternative control strategies, and Adam pointed out a bunch of those. Cameras and electronic triggers. I will point out you can put all the electronics you want to on a trap, and it doesn't accomplish goal number one. Goal number one is convincing that pig that it's okay to walk inside the trap. And so these cameras and electronic triggers were game changers because they put the trigger in the human's hands versus in the pig's hands. So you eliminate some of that error. In non-target captures, you eliminate some of that error in subpar captures where you only capture a portion of the sounder. But these traps have advantages and disadvantages too. They're a glorified corral trap with electronic trigger on them, and so you still got to convince the pig to walk inside the trap. Adam pointed out a scenario earlier about the pigs walking on the back side of box traps and why it's important to bait correctly. Pigs are almost always going to walk on the outside of panels before they walk through a narrow opening to go inside of it. And so we've got to figure out ways to really get the pigs conditioned to walking inside that trap first thing. The advantages and disadvantages to these electronic traps, it was said earlier, and I can't agree more. Where do the pigs live? Well, where there's no cell signal is where they live. And so make sure you scout for cell signal when you're planning to trap with these techniques. They still have that habituation period, and you still can have trap shy hogs if you don't catch as many as you need to. Actually, a lot of these brand new trappers that go buy a fancy trap, they're at the bar with their buddies at night and they say, hey, look what I got in my trap. And they've got 20 of the 30 that were planning that they were planning to catch, and they go ahead and catch them anyway because it's a good story, right? And so you still have those trap shot hogs if you don't incorporate the right techniques, and you still have trap shot hogs because they're a glorified corral trap. Pigs are going to be inherently shy of man-made structures like this if you don't give them the time to get accustomed to them. There are other advantages of these traps, like you can't eliminate those non-target captures because now you're the trigger, as well as capturing entire sounders. And then bait monitoring. If you got a trap out there with a camera on it, you don't have to drive to the field every day if pigs didn't show up last night and refresh the bait or anything like that. So there are other advantages as well. So what is Noble Research Institute doing? I will point out most of our research is being done in Texas and Oklahoma. We've partnered with some other organizations across the country, but what the research, the data I'm going to show you today is from some of our older projects here in Oklahoma. First off, we introduced alligators to the great state of Oklahoma. We were the first to do that. We beat the wildlife department. That's not true. That's a joke. I put this picture in there though to point out that pigs are continually learning from us. They're continually adapting to our trap environment, to our control environment, and outsmarting us, as Jessica pointed out earlier. So a good trapper is one that's adaptive, that's continuing to modify his techniques, and there's no techniques that you shouldn't let these techniques be limited by your imagination. Some of the things that we started thinking about when we started working on pigs years ago were a little bit out there, but some of them worked. And so just keep your imagination flowing. So when I moved to Noble, I was not interested in feral swine. I'm a wildlife biologist. Feral pigs are not wildlife. Feral pigs are invasive livestock. I consider wildlife all those native species that I grew up to hunt and love when I was a kid. So I moved to Noble to work on white-tailed deer. I moved here to do deer research. We were capturing deer underneath drop nets and putting GPS collars on them and monitoring their movements along with GPS equipped hunters. to kind of look at hunter behavior and deer behavior and, those relationships between the hunter and deer behavior. So we were doing some pretty cool research, but lo and behold, underneath our drop nets, pigs were also attracted to the bait. And so on a casual experience one day, we decided, I was tired of shooting BB guns and slingshots at pigs underneath the net so that I could continue trapping deer, because they'd run off and then 5 minutes later, they'd be right back to consume the corn. So casually we decided, well, this is kind of an older net at this trap site. Let's see if we can let's just drop the net on the pigs. We'll remove them all and get back to trapping whitetail deer for the research. We dropped on 20 pigs, ran up there, gave all 20 pigs a high-speed lead injection, removed those pigs from the trap site, set the nets back up, and the next night we were back to trapping deer. And so we thought about that. We said, well, that worked pretty effective. And so maybe this warrants some further investigation. And so that was kind of the Noble Research Institute's first research project in terms of feral swine. So this was back in 2010 and 11. The objective of this study was to compare the effectiveness and efficiency of drop nets and corral traps for capturing feral hogs in Oklahoma. At the time, producers that we interacted with were using standard corral traps. These were animal activated systems. And so we're going to, in this research, we compared that system, best case scenario for that system. I mean, I'll point out they were double-sided traps, and we did incorporate all the 3 C's, or the trapping best management practices. We worked with several trappers across the country, including the National Wildlife Research Center, which is the kind of the research arm of Wildlife Services based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. We also worked with Texas A&M University and Billy Higginbotham and those guys that were really working on pigs there to identify the best trapping strategies. And so we, in that 2-year research study, which happened to be my master's project through Texas A&M as well, we were able to capture 86% of the identifiable population using drop nets and 49% of the identifiable population using corral traps. And if you remember correctly, we're implementing the best benefit practices for both of these techniques. If you remember correctly, we needed a 66 or a 70% mark to maintain control number. We need to control 70% of the population on an annual basis in order to maintain status quo. With our conventional corral traps, we weren't getting there. And so we got really excited about this drop net technique and started promoting this to landowners across Texas and Oklahoma anyway, but the adoption was terrible. I mean, drop nets took a lot of effort to set up, and I'll get into some of the disadvantages here in a minute. We also kept track of, we kept a catch per unit effort, so a capture efficiency, if you will, kept track of the amount of time we spent each of these techniques and how much time we spent per hog. Basically with drop nets, we spent 1.9 hours per hog to remove those animals. With corral traps, we spent 2.3 hours per hog. That being, those numbers probably aren't significantly different, but the point is, with the same or less effort, we're able to have much longer lasting hog control when using drop nets, because we're trapping over that 70% mark. And so it takes a lot longer for those pigs to repopulate back to that original level. And so our drop nets were much more effective than corral traps. The advantages, of the drop nets, we could capture entire sounders. We were able to reduce trap shyness. The pigs, for whatever reason, did not, in our population here in southern Oklahoma, did not seem to connect that overhead canopy with any danger. And so they were much less apprehensive about walking underneath the nets. In fact, we oftentimes caught them in the very first night we had the nets set up, which is unheard of in corral traps. You don't set a corral trap up and set the trigger on the first night. Because we had these were a human activated trigger, we went ahead and set the triggers on the first night. We found that at about 80% of the trap nights, we caught pigs the very first night. We, obviously, since the human is the trigger, we eliminate non-target captures. Disadvantages, however, it is difficult to remove pigs for those with a market, like you guys have in Texas. We also have a market here in Oklahoma. So it is very difficult to remove pigs. from those and take those to a slaughter facility or commercial hunting area. But again, in our part of the world, Noble is not actively trying to promote moving those pigs into slaughter facilities or commercial hunting facilities. We interact with producers on a daily basis or trappers on a daily basis that, most of those markets, the slaughter facilities especially, won't buy pigs unless they're 60 pounds, 50 pounds. There's different requirements at different times of the year, it seems. But I've spoken with a lot of trappers in Oklahoma that they catch the pigs. If it's 50 pounds or greater, they keep it. If it's less, what do you think they do? They kick it back out so they can catch it when it's marketable. And so anytime we tie those economic incentives to a feral swine, we further promote their existence. And so as a nationwide approach, I advocate for some producers to sell pigs so they can pay for their trapping expenses. But I don't want to recreationalize feral pigs. That's exactly what states like California have done. And guess what? They're never going to get rid of pigs. I'm not saying we are either, but that's our goal. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit there. So let's come back to the slide. Other disadvantages, you have to have a man on site to trigger drop nets. In fact, I've got a video here of kind of a typical trap night. And cost was a variable, to get set up, if you don't know how to build some of these systems on your own, it's going to cost you 10 grand plus to build a electronic drop net system. Much like the ones we had that notified a person of pig presence. Most of the time pigs are active at nighttime. So in the pitch black, we don't want to be watching a net nonstop. We set up some monitoring devices that alerted us to pig activity. Here's a quick video of a typical trap night with a drop net. Our drop nets are 4-inch square mesh. They're 60 foot by 60 foot in size. There's 4 corner posts and there's a center post in the middle here. It kind of forms like a big TP style tent. We bait underneath the center pole. We sit in a truck a couple 100 yards away. When all the pigs are on the bait site, we hit a button on a remote control. Drop net falls, and that's kind of when the rodeo starts. We run up there with a 22 caliber rifle and dispatch all those pigs with a brain shot. The pigs do get tangled up really well in the drop nets, they don't tear up the nets too bad either. That's generally one of the questions I get. I pointed out earlier we were able to trap the first night oftentimes with drop nets. I'll just direct your attention to the January 20th, 2010 timestamp on this photograph. You can see there's no net set up at this point. I'm just baiting pigs. January 21st at 1:30 in the afternoon. A day later, I'm setting up the net at 1:30. An hour and a half later, same day, pigs are there ready to be trapped. And one other thing I like to point out, whenever you've got pigs laying down in your traps, they're comfortable. And so that's one thing these suspended traps like drop nets afforded us is comfortability. Pigs were comfortable even the first night the traps were set up. They were comfortable walking underneath those nets, and we were able to capture those pigs very efficiently. So in that 2 years of research, we learned a number of things. To have an effective trapping program or control program for pigs, we needed approaches that targeted the entire sounder. It's much harder to capture trap shy pigs in any trap style. There are some that are better than others, but it is very hard to trap those animals. So we wanted something that could capture an entire sounder. We needed something that was man activated so that we could be the most selective, not, as far as non-targets are concerned, as well as the full sounder is concerned. We needed something that we could have portability. We wanted something we could take to the pigs. Any good trap will tell you don't try to lure the pigs to your existing trap. Bait the pigs where they live or near where they spend the daytime. Not right on top of it, but near where they spend the daytime hours, kind of loafing. Take your bait piles there, and eventually move your traps to the pigs versus the other way around. And then we needed something to get around the trap wariness issue. What we noticed in all the video documentation, as well as we did some side studies where we put trap panels on T-posts to look at trap wariness responses to height of panels on the ground. And we did determine that if you could limit the ground level obstruction around traps, you're going to be more effective. And that's why these drop nets were super, super effective for us in controlling our pig populations. Let me go back to that. I will point out, though, I gave you that number, 86% in drop nets versus 49% in corral traps. You know, there are people out there that will promote, well, we catch 100% of the pigs out on the landscape. In most cases, we did catch 100% of the pigs that were utilizing that bait site, but we use actual research models to project our pig population. So we use Lincoln Peter estimates, which is a population estimator based on mark recapture techniques, so that you can actually estimate full population sizes versus just the pigs that come to your bait. We also know that there are a thing called bait shy pigs. You know, we've talked a lot about mass crops. There are pigs that just don't eat corn. They don't come to the corn. That's where some of these other techniques can be effective, you know, on the back end of some of these very most effective technologies like hunting. And so from that research, you know, the board buster, which I've heard in all of the presentations mentioned today, all three of the presentations mentioned, that was developed at the Noble Research Institute. It was developed after that research on drop nets and finding that, you know, that suspended nature was very advantageous to trapping feral swine. We built that trap to be portable. It was remote human activated. And it was rigid. So we took combinations, benefits, you know, advantages of all these different trapping systems. The electronic trapping system, we knew that was a benefit. We knew the suspended nature was a benefit. And we knew that corral traps, box traps had the rigid structure that the drop nets did not afford to hold pigs overnight, so that a producer could be more efficient and not have to work in the night hours, right? And so we incorporated all those things and built what's called Board Buster. This is not the first design. This wasn't Board Buster 1.0, but I'll show the progression here in a minute. Board Buster 1.0, you know, obviously the way the system works is it texts you a picture whenever there's motion detected in the trap. You log on, watch a live video stream. You know, Board Buster 1.0 was square like this. In the picture, you had a light. You could turn on extra lights, which were infrared lights. You could drop the trap at will. And it was at the time, it was the first real-time live video streaming technology on a hog trap. And so it's, you know, we put all that stuff together. It was kind of a unique experience, and I may get to that here in a little bit, but we built that trap. We had a couple casual trapping experiences with it. We saw it was effective. Noble Research Institute isn't into bringing products to the marketplace. You know, at first we were actually thinking about just selling or giving away plans to build a trap like this. There are some high-tech components like a laptop computer in the field, micro switches, relays, USB powered relays. I think in the first prototype, I actually ejected the CD-ROM tray on my computer to hit a little micro switch, which then triggered the solenoids to drop the trap. And so it was quite a process. But Noble isn't into marketing those materials or those technologies. We're into doing research. We're the Noble Research Institute. And so after we felt like we had a pretty cool tool, an effective tool, we spent another 2 years in research of this trapping technique. I'll remind you of the effectiveness of corral traps at 49%, drop nets at 86%. With Board Buster, an additional 2 years of research, we were able to capture 88% of the identifiable population using the same population measures or population estimators, using the same best management practices to bait the traps whole 9 yards. And so we caught 88% of the population. Where we really bring home the bacon is the efficiency thing. Remember, I told you there wasn't a significant difference really in the amount of pigs per hour with the corral traps versus the drop nets. You can see those two bars there. When it came to Board Buster, since now we're not sitting in the field to have the effectiveness of drop nets because they're a rigid system, you know, the trap lets us know when pigs are in the trap. We wake up, drop the trap, go back to sleep, and then we deal with them at our own time. So we had that effectiveness of drop nets, near the 86% mark at 88%. But now we had the efficiency of the corral trap in terms of the man hours input. And so now we can catch three times the number of pigs per unit effort utilizing that boar buster system. This is I think the same slide that Adam had earlier, but this is Boar Buster 2.0. At that point in time, again, I said Noble's wasn't interested in bringing this product to market, and so we found a partner that could do so. We worked with WW Livestock Systems out of Thomas, Oklahoma, an Oklahoma company which we were looking for. We also used an Oklahoma company to develop our camera, tactical electronics. They built one-off stuff for the military, and we're able to put a computer in a box, basically look like a cellular camera or look like a game camera. And so we coupled those technologies, and now we don't have a laptop computer sitting in a waterproof box out in the field. We actually have a waterproof game camera, if you will. This video, if it gets going, this was prototype 1.0, again, square, 16 by 16. At this point, we were still driving T-posts in the ground. We had 4-inch square mesh. We're tethered to a laptop computer at this point, but here we are with 20 pigs inside the trap. Again, you see 0 outside. We don't want to trap when there's pigs outside the trap because we can see live video feed. We eliminate that possibility of training or educating trap shy pigs. So we caught all of those pigs in that trapping event. Version 2.0, this one's round, still tethered to electronic, you can see the wire flapping in the foreground there. But again, we caught all those pigs and didn't educate any. Still dropped straight down at that point. I think this was 16 foot in diameter, still 4-inch square mesh. The final and prototype that was reproduced for production by WW is that you'll see a slightly different motion on this trap when it comes down. This is 44 pigs in that trap. Again, we caught all those, no escapes, and now we've gone to a 2x4 square mesh. Obviously, we're under a nonprofit organization doing research in agriculture. We're under the gun from animal interest groups and things like that. So we wanted to make sure we were providing the safest trapping experience for the pigs as well as the humans. And so that was one modification that we made. The spin down approach made the trap a little more efficient, easier for one person to set up. You could crank that trap from a central location versus having 2 winches or a dangerous series of cables around the top rim of the trap, like in prototype 2.0. And so there were some modifications there. The trap went from 16 foot in diameter to 18 foot in diameter. We cut it into some smaller pieces so that it would fit in the bed of a 1/2-ton pickup truck. That's we oftentimes still leave the trap assembled somewhat to speed our setup in a new location when we're transporting from A to B, but it does fit in about half-ton pickup truck. Some more of the research, we were comfortable with talking about our 88% capture rate with Boar Buster because we utilize some of the best professionals in the country to help us put that research project together. But we wanted to begin looking at we were experienced trappers trapping these animals, and so what on a nationwide basis as producers start implementing this strategy, putting Boar Buster to use, what kind of success are they having? And so anybody that has a Boar Buster account, I hope you guys that have traps on the call are importing this data because it is valuable to us, much like the data you're collecting in your respective counties. But when you capture pigs, you can enter the date, the number you captured, the zip code, and it helps us create, this was early on, but this helps us create maps like this because we have access to some of the logs on the Boar Buster cameras. I can actually pair the amount of effort put into trapping with a camera by the number of minutes used for the month. I can pair that data with the number of pig captured, and I can come up with a catch per unit effort map for the entire country. See where pigs are becoming more trap shy, monitor those type things, as well as look at how effective they are in comparison to us really good trappers. What we're finding is they're not that far off. There are trappers out there that are, man, I don't know, they're better than some of us. And there's trappers out there that are just, boy, they're setting up a trap, putting bait in it on the day they buy it, and they're not very effective at all. So it looks like they're probably just using their cameras to watch deer all night or something like that. But by and large, catch per unit effort is pretty similar across the country, and compares pretty close to what we're doing. So we can look up data like this, for that zip code, the number of pigs captured. This was early on, so those numbers are a lot higher now. And so I want to ask the question again before I finish here. Should we continue promoting the use of all the techniques that we have in our tool belt? My answer is yes, but I argue that we must be strategic in nature first. And so utilize those. Read the context of the land, figure out, based on your pig populations there, we need to develop some strategies we need to be strategic in nature. We need to develop the strategies or utilize the strategies that are going to be most effective first, and then supplement with those that potentially would cause harm if utilized in the beginning. And so I argue that we need to be strategic and integrated. I have to argue this point all the time with producers, because if I don't, the producers I work with in South Central Oklahoma are going to go buy the cheapest thing they can, and they're going to implement it in the most, in the quickest time frame that they possibly can as well. I don't know that this is exactly where each of these strategies falls on the spectrum. All I will point out is when you guys in Texas and Oklahoma, at least, when you guys are selecting trapping strategies or control strategies, we are to the point in our states, especially the parts of the state where I reside, as well as where the counties that spoke tonight. We're in the scenario where these methods, maybe not aerial gunning in that tall timber, but where these three methods on the far right are going to be the most effective. I would promote utilizing those strategies, or teaming with landowners in the neighborhood, putting together associations of trappers or counties that have systems like these, but utilize those scenarios first, and then supplement with the scenarios previously or mentioned further to the left of on this graph. If you're not going to do that, if you're wanting to do something alone, make sure you're paying attention to that type of strategic effort. If you're not going to do it on your own, again, talk to people like Adam. Talk to those wildlife services guys. They are wizards, and they can do a really good job of helping you out. We just need more of them. And so again, like Adam pointed out, talk to your legislators, and let's get a little more money funneled toward the effort to control this invasive and terroristic animal. With that, I think that's all I've got. We are continuing to do some more research in terms of, we've got GPS collars on lots of pigs. Right now, we're looking at their behaviors in terms of the Judas pig technique. We're looking at utilization of resources, both rangeland and monoculture pasture and crop ground and things like that. And so more to come on the research side of things, but we are finding some very interesting things in terms of the Judas pig technique. And with that, I'll stop, and I'll let you guys ask any questions if you still got them. Jessica, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a little quieter now, but I'm gonna type. I saw a chat to type in my contact information. I'm gonna give everybody my email in the chat. If you've got other questions or want to do follow-up phone call or something like that, shoot me a text or shoot me an email. And I'll try to get some of these chat questions. I may work from the bottom up. Looks like you, Jessica, you responded to some of those. I like Adam's suggestion about a bounty program, or landowner could pay for undersized pigs to help promote trapping. I like that suggestion. From the research we've done, just visiting with other states about bounty programs, I've seen mixed results. I've seen a lot of happy landowners and less happy counties, or state state governments. But certainly, if you can have landowners, supplement the price for those smaller pigs, we need to get rid of all of them. So I don't see any other questions.
All right, guys. Well, if no one has any more questions, tomorrow I will be sending out a survey link. We would appreciate any information you can give us. That survey is going to tell us if we did a good job, if this was the information that you needed, and it's also going to help give us some statistics on damage assessments as well. It does include some of that. If the speakers don't mind, if y'all would like to send me a copy of your presentation, I will include those in the email as well. And of course, this will be recorded and posted on my YouTube channel. And that link will be made available to those who were not able to make it this evening. So if y'all don't have any other questions, then you're dismissed for the evening. I hope that y'all got plenty of information. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Have a good evening.